Welcome to another episode of Brace for Impact, covering all things Impact Wrestling. As always, live from No Cell Studios, I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro. And join on a Thursday evening, or maybe if you're listening Friday morning, with that multi-mania, that Kentucky waterfall himself, Colton. What is up, dude?
What's going on, brother? Man, the Ocho, here we are. 8th episode of Brace for Impact. Man, just that was an excellent episode of weekly TV, man. Impact TV never disappoints, but I gotta say, man, I think this might be the best episode we've covered together. This was great from top to bottom.
Anchored by great matches, great storytelling, and you and I were texting about this. Again, if you guys are not doing the Impact YouTube subscription thing where they eliminate the commercials, you're missing out because it is the most streamlined version of watching professional wrestling for across all domains. I mean, it was unbelievable, just the action pack. And when they're about to go to commercial break, every time I sell it, I'm like, oh man, they're going to commercial break, and then they're right back to the action. It's fantastic. So guys, how much are you paying a month? It just comes out of my account. $2.99, $1.99.
Not even. It is 99 cents. So it's whatever your state charges in sales tax. So here in Kentucky, I'm paying $1.05 for it. It's great, man. And I mean so it runs on a 30-minute delay. You don't get to start watching the show till 8:30. But like I said, no commercials whatsoever. Gives you an extra half hour to get some dinner in and hang out with your loved ones, and then boom, just a pure, unadulterated hour and a half of excellent pro wrestling, uninterrupted. It's good shit, man. It's hard to beat. It's the best setup. I wish I could watch every wrestling show like this.
100%. And the excuse people have about not being able to find Impact and access is not available on cable providers, and there's no excuse anymore. This is a product you guys should be consuming. It's consistent. It is one of those, everyone's sleeping on it. And I think now that you and I are really uncovering the rock and turning it over and seeing all the hidden gems that are on this show, from the work rate and really the storytelling. I know we're emphasizing that every week here, but it's the consistent storytelling that we continually ask for from the other products, from WWE, AEW. We get it in short bursts, but they give the loves all across the board: mid card, women's division, the upper card, the tag team. It's all over the place. So I'm really happy with what we're reviewing here on Impact.
Yeah, same here, man. Week to week, some of the best storytelling in wrestling.
So let's get into the inside, talk about the news of the week. We have some big news popping in here as we approach the Multiverse show. We got Emergence coming up. It's going to be a big fall also for Impact Wrestling, but let's get into the insight.
The insight.
All right, here we are on the inside, and this is a very specific version of our news here because, as you guys know, we cover all the news in wrestling on Wrestling Tonight, and it's deep diving and combing through every promotion. But here on Brace for Impact, we're going to cover all things Impact Wrestling, and very specific. And we had Doki coming back to America as, you know, the familiar star. If you've watched New Japan Pro Wrestling, he'll be taking on Sami Callihan at the Impact Multiverse United 2 show from Philadelphia, the old ECW arena, now known as the 2300 Arena, Sunday, August 20th. Colton, we're quickly approaching that. Doki hasn't been on TV since he wrestled Jack Perry back on June 21st. It's very rare we see him here. This is a nice surprise that we're going to see in Doki. And if you guys have not seen him, goddamn, a technical delight.
Yeah, I've not seen a lot of his work, man. So this was from what I've seen of it's been excellent shit. I'm really excited. We're slowly rolling out more matches for this Metaverse United card, and this is a really good one, man. You know, it's gonna be a real treat to get to see him and the Death Machine go at it.
So right now it's interesting because Emergence, and we see a lot of the stuff going on with Callahan and Rich Swann and a tag team. We referenced it. We saw him in action tonight, and what was a great opening contest. He's currently teaming with Rich Swann. So this is an interesting switch up. And I know this New Japan Pro Wrestling Multiverse show with Impact has storylines be damned. I think they're putting things together and making things interesting. We have 4 matches on the card right now. Lio Rush and Trey Miguel teaming up together versus Hiromu Takahashi and Mike Bailey. So that's an interesting matchup, especially with Trey Miguel and the Rascals. You would think that the Rascals are back together, but no, we're going to get a tag with Lio Rush. And then we also have the awesome main event here. Alex Shelley defending against Hiroshi Tanahashi in what is set to be a really good match. And Tanahashi, fresh off that G1 climax, he is going to be ready for this task. And I hope we see a better version of Tanahashi than we saw on Dynamite on the build to Forbidden Door. And even at Forbidden Door, felt like he was tired, but hopefully he has a little bit of rest, even though G1's kind of grueling.
Yeah, man, I have to say, I'm right there with you. I hope he's a little bit more rested going into this one, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to bet on it with him coming fresh off the G1.
So the other match, as we mentioned, Doki and Sami Callihan joins the fold. We also have Deonna Purrazzo issuing a challenge to Stardom for the event. Hasn't been publicly answered. You can make your assumptions of who it might be. Maybe it's Julia. Maybe it's somebody else. Unsure who it's going to be right now. But you imagine if Deonna Purrazzo is putting out a challenge, Colton, that someone's going to answer. She's not going to not wrestle at the show.
Oh no, man! She's been the face of the women's division for Impact for the last few years. I mean, Trinity's got the title, but the Deonna Purrazzo is still at the tippy top of the card, and everybody. There's no way she doesn't wrestle at the Multiverse show.
So we also have the New Japan Pro Wrestling TV champion Zack Sabre Jr. teaming with Shane Haste to take on Moose and Eddie Edwards. And this is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of these outside storyline matches happening because obviously Eddie Edwards is tied up with Frankie Kazarian. Moose is tied up in this heel faction at the top of the card. And Alex Shelley obviously is focused on other things. This show, and maybe that's the function of it, they may want it to live outside of the bubble and let you guys just immerse yourselves on a one-off kind of segment. And this is how WCW handled their relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling back in the day. It used to just be kind of outside the storytelling, and then they got back to it. So maybe that's what they're treating it as.
And I think it's cool that, this match right here perfectly illustrates that the presentation of this show is going to be brand versus brand, tribal warfare in a sense. It's going to be, issues aside, or the fact, storylines aside, it's going to be Impact versus New Japan, which is it's going to be a cool show.
And I also think that the fact that Emergence is the next week, that they have to pay off their big storylines at that show. So I think both hands are washing each other at this point, because the Multiverse show is going to function as an exposure for the Impact fans and also for the New Japan Pro Wrestling fans to get familiar with the talent. This is the second version of the show. They've always worked collaboratively together in recent memory, but just having this on the platform, you and I were talking about it weeks ago. Forbidden Door is AEW's version of it, but let's not sleep on the Multiverse show. This is a very cool component that Impact's bringing to the table late into the summer.
Yeah, man. And two promotions that are already used to and comfortable in working together and sharing talent. They've had a great open door policy between each other for years and years. I mean, they share a network and Access TV as well for weekly shows. Yeah, absolutely don't sleep on this. It's a busy summer full of wrestling. It's AEW and Impact are both doing pay-per-view shows within about a week of each other. It seems to be a trend going around, but that's a good problem to have as a fan. So yeah, if you're thinking about missing this show, don't, because the more matches that get announced, the better the card's getting.
So you have John Gresham currently sidelined with an injury. We got this news earlier this week, and it wasn't announced officially by Impact. We heard from Beyond Wrestling that in their social media post that he's pulling out of their show for August 13th. He was supposed to wrestle Fancy Ryan Clancy at the American Rana event on Sunday coming up this weekend, obviously, and that's going to be in the Massachusetts area. They're looking for a replacement for him. But the thing we're pulling out from the Impact side of things, because they're telling stories with John Gresham on our TVs on Access on a weekly basis, he sustained an undisclosed injury and he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll see how Impact will address this going forward. But this is a shame because they're doing some fun things with Gresham on our screens, the anti-X division type of stuff. They want to be following the rules, but maybe we have to put that on ice for a sec.
Yeah, man. And I think we haven't gotten too far into that story. We're seeing this new side of Gresham and this new angle of him, kind of not being happy with the way things are going in Impact and wanting to change things a little bit. I think that it's unfortunate always to get injured and have to be removed from TV for any period of time, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface into this vein of Gresham's character and presentation right now. So, it's not like he's got 8 weeks of momentum behind him in this gimmick, and then all of a sudden, oh shit, we got to put him on the shelf. So if anything, hope for a speedy recovery, but not absolutely horrible timing. He's not getting put on. He's getting put on ice, but he wasn't red hot yet. He was still lukewarm. So he'll have plenty of time and plenty of room to heat back up once he gets back healthy.
I agree with that. And I think also a silver lining of usually a bad thing, which is bulk tapings. We have the fact that today was a tape show. This happened last week and Gresham wasn't on our TVs for this week, but 4 to 6 weeks fly by when you're taping in 2 weeks at a clip. So he may only miss technically 3 weeks of Impact TV. He won't get to enjoy the Multiverse show. We won't get to see him at Emergence, but sooner than later, we may be able to see him. And, 4 weeks from now, we could possibly see him at that 1,000th episode of Impact at White Plains. Maybe he'll be back in some capacity. And just because he's hurt with whatever this undisclosed injury is, doesn't mean he can't be on our screen, because the most formidable storytelling we saw from Gresham was that sit down with Tom Hannafin, where he was talking about wanting to restore order in professional wrestling. And I think John Gresham has, this will be a good chance to work on that side of things for him, because we know In the Ring is well polished, but this is a good opportunity. And we've seen it throughout the history of wrestling, not to overemphasize it, but there's been other wrestlers that utilize time injured to kind of fine tune things that need a little bit of work. And I would say John Gresham needs to work on that promo. And I think that Tom Hannafin sit down was a good start.
Yeah, I do too. And I want to see more sit downs and more interview segments with Gresham. And like you said, there's nothing to, depending on the extent of the undisclosed injury, there's really not a whole lot stopping him from having a sit down in this in between period for recovery.
So we also had Impact Wrestling Hall of Famer Gail Kim speaking to PWMania.com's Scott Mitchell during the Impact's press pass to promote what we know is the upcoming UK tour that we talked about 2 weeks ago. And during it, she was talking about the state of the Knockouts division and where she thinks it's at. And it's high praise coming from someone like Gail Kim, who's accomplished a lot in the wrestling business, not just in Impact, but across all different promotions, even WWE. And she said, if you would have told me this when the Knockouts division started, I would have cried, knowing how far it has come and knowing what it really blossomed into. And all the girls, I mean, it's such a solid roster right now. It kind of reminds me of all the different personalities we had when we first started off with Awesome Kong, ODB, and all different styles. Now we have the Virtuosa, Kylan King, and Masha Slamovich, just to name a few. She continues, there's just so much talent on this roster. I'm so proud of how far they come and the company is doing with them. We're really blessed. So we heap praise on top of this Impact Knockouts division every single week. And I think we're all in agreement about the lack of story on the AEW side of things with the women's division, and that Dynamite main event kind of showcased just the issues that they have with putting them in the main events, not the issue for lack of storytelling. They could take a page of the Impact's book. And I think with Jimmy Jacobs on that side of things, not sure how much he was working with the Knockouts division, but they need to figure out a way to copy and paste what Impact's doing, because every single week there's emphasis on these women and you really connect with these characters.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And it's really, you look at it from show to show, they're really not given that much more time on Impact TV to women's wrestling. So, we're getting at least one women's match, maybe two, but always, a 45 second to 90-minute or 90-second backstage vignette with some sort of story development for the women's division. And it's usually more than one storyline. It's really not that hard, man. You have the TV time. Just give them more time. It doesn't take a lot to, especially with the roster they have, to be able to further the development. I mean, just, start doing two backstage promo segments a week, and they don't have to be long. It can be less than 5 minutes for the two of them, and it'll build on each other. But man, just gotta say, it's gotta feel good as a women's wrestler to have Gail Kim come out in an interview and address you by name, talking about how you are, the best of the best, and something to be seen as a part of the Knockouts division. That's awesome. Good for Masha, Kylan King, and Virtuoso. That's high praise coming from Gail Kim.
100%. And also looking through the lens of the conversation from the flagship this morning, listened to it this morning, obviously, on Thursday mornings for the AEW Dynamite and the Collision Quickie, all the things that the Two Bad Chads do, what the Turnbuckle Tavern has blossomed from. Make sure you guys check it out where you can find audio podcasts. They had mentioned the state of the women's division, had a long form conversation, and Sneed was saying that they needed to have an influx of stealing a big free agent, whether it be Mercedes Moné or stealing Charlotte Flair or potentially Bianca Belair. But I think also too, you watch this Impact Knockouts division, it's so deep with talent. So many women on this roster could go anywhere and continue to tell stories. But I don't think that's AEW's issue. And I'm curious to get your take on it, because if you were to take any of these women and plop them on the AEW roster, I don't think they make a difference. It's not because they're not talented enough. It's because of the way it's structured. And I think with Impact, they continually tell stories, whether it be with the Knockouts tag division and the world title. It feels like there's a top to bottom tier of women, where in AEW, it's just everyone gunning for the same title, and there's no real cohesive story going on. So I'm curious your take on that. If you think you could pull any of the talent from Impact and throw them on the AEW roster, do you think it would make a difference right now?
Not anybody that's currently on the Impact roster. I don't think so. I think it's fundamentally just the way that they present the women's division has got to change for there to be any sort of, life breathed into it. I think it really does. I've gone back to it. I brought this up on the debate months ago, it comes down to time. You got to give them, and it's not just giving them the main event and giving them a 12 to 15 minute match every show. That's the biggest complaint from wrestling fans of AEW period is, sometimes they'll get into a rut where they're just doing dream match booking and there's no story. The women's division desperately needs story. I mean, would a big name from an outside promotion give them an opportunity to maybe do a little more storytelling? Sure. But we've had big names come in that, just haven't been handled well. And I mean, I have a little bit of faith. I like what they're doing with Statlander right now. So I've got a little bit of faith that the TBS title picture is going to help move things along in the women's division. I think it's already kind of moving in the right direction, but that's mid-card title, brother. We got to have, you've got the roster to be able to tell story with, you ought to be able to tell story for the women's world title. And it's interesting that you mentioned, is there anybody on the Impact roster currently that could come over that could make a difference? Not anybody. I don't think anybody would want to leave the Impact women's roster currently and go over there just for seeing the way that the Knockouts division is presented versus AEW's women's division. But I think that Jordan Grace could land there and really shake some shit up. And, she is a free agent right now. I think she is at the top of any women's wrestling roster anywhere in the world. So, I mean, it could be an interesting place for her to land. I would just hope that they get a little momentum going before that would be an option, because I would hate to see her go there and just kind of get lost in the sauce like everybody else is.
Yeah, looking at the original origin of the story we were talking about with Gail Kim, this is just showing the product of the seeds that ODB, Awesome Kong, Gail Kim, those women have planted, and they're reaping those crops years later. And they've put a lot of emphasis on women's wrestling. In a lot of ways, they were the industry leader in that well before any of the other companies started to put a lot of stock in them. To the point where, Tessa Blanchard was their world champion. That's not the women's division, but it is putting stock in women's professional wrestling. And Impact for many years has given women's wrestling a platform to grow, and you can thank them for a lot of the growth we've seen in women's wrestling. So they continue to be trailblazers, really, and maybe AEW, WWE continue to follow the format from Impact side. I know there's a lot less pressure on Impact side. You mentioned ratings, and I think the Chads were mentioning that as well, where they want to make sure that they're popping a big rating, especially in this contract negotiation with WBD. They want to make sure they're putting out the best possible showcase of their product. And it's a catch-22 because they'll never get the opportunity to kind of gain steam and be something fans are looking forward to because it's not featured enough, but you don't have the patience. And I think Impact has the luxury of having the patience, they're on access. They're kind of comfortable where they are, and they can really let things grow, and they can take risks, and not even just with the women's division, with the cinematic stuff, with some younger talent. They can find ways to be creative because of the lack of pressure on their side. And I think the spotlight's not as hot on Impact. They don't have the light shining bright in their eyes with everyone's eyes on them. Impact's a lot of times working in the shadows, and people pop in and out. There are the diehards, of course, that watch it on a weekly basis. We're here covering it on a weekly basis now. But I think the lack of pressure and being that secure number 3 has helped Impact immensely, where they can just, they can vibe and take risk, and those risks really pay off in a lot of ways, and they look really smart when doing it.
Most definitely, man. I think people undersell very often how much of a strength it is for Impact to, because they are. I don't think it's any argument that as far as American wrestling goes, they are the firm number 3 promotion. But they're, in that firm number 3 spot, they don't have any corporate interference really breathing down their neck and causing them any problem. They don't have Warner Brother Discovery coming down at them with, we want X amount more pay-per-views. We want this, we want that, because we've got all this money invested in it. That's part of the perk of being a smaller promotion and being on a channel like Access, is you really have a lot more creative freedom to do things the way that you want to do it. And I think that definitely helps. And, I do want to say, I don't want to come out here and just sound like I'm totally damning AEW's ability to present the women's division. I said this on the debate show as well. When I say time, I don't just mean in the sense of giving women's wrestling more time on the program week to week. I also mean just time as a promotion. Like, AEW's in its fourth year. Look at WWE's women's division 10 years ago, and look where it is today. It wasn't all roses from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like it started off very rough. And, it was, I mean, you think about when we were, in middle school watching women's wrestling was not women's wrestling. It was bra and panties matches. It was borderline exploitation on a weekly basis, and it's come a long way. It doesn't just happen overnight. I think it's easy to, when there's so much content and you're such a big fan, it's easy to pick things apart, but we got to keep in mind too, man. I mean, we're not even half a decade in. It's got nowhere to go but up. And I hope that it will get better with time, but yeah, it has really kind of hit a plateau, and we've been on it for a while.
Very well said. I think, Impact continues to, the Rawdown crew was just talking about it prior to us going on, and they were talking about how insane it is that we're approaching 1,000 episodes for Impact, especially really where they were as an organization, and watch their trajectory. It's fascinating, from the NWA TNA days to the Total Nonstop Action days to being, the Kurt Angle, the hub of this like retired type of wrestlers, Hulk Hogan, Mick Foley, that era of Impact. And then now what it is now. But the accomplishment that they will have in White Plains on September 9th, I believe it is, for the 1,000th episode of Impact TV. 1,000 episodes of anything is insane. To put that in perspective, Nitro only had 288 episodes. By the time Raw hit 1,000, it was in 2013. That's a long time. That's a lot of years that have passed. So, and I understand that they're doing it in a lot of ways. Some of those years were done in obscurity. They were done in ways where people were not really talking about them. But it's a massive undertaking for any show, whether it be wrestling or not. 1,000 episodes is fantastically impressive. So just want to put that note on there. But let's move to our next story here, Colton. We have Impact Wrestling World Champion Alex Shelley. He was also on PW Mania's Scott Mitchell's Impact Press Pass, talking about the UK tour. And he was addressing how important it is for being the world champion for Impact. And he said, quote, "It's pretty massive. Actually, believe it or not, the last tour I did in the UK was back in 2012. And Chris Sabin was out with a knee injury at that point. So I actually went over there as a singles competitor. I locked horns with Doug Williams, Austin Aries, Mark Haskins, who are all very talented individuals." He continues saying, "It was a totally different time to go over as the face of the company, most likely main event at least one of these shows, I would imagine. I'm really excited about that, and the UK fans historically have always been awesome." He continued to talk about his history in the UK. He said he did 3 tours in 2008, 2009, 2012, and they welcomed us and made it feel like this was the reason I even got into this in the first place. This is what makes wrestling fun. Ultimately, this is a sport. It should be fun. Talks about the live crowd, how impressive they are. And of course, we'll get to experience on a huge stage, almost 80,000 plus people at All In at Wembley. But we don't want to dismiss what's happening in October for Impact. I'm going back to the UK. This was a hot spot for them. UK, they had WWE. Now they're getting some AEW. Impact in October. It's going to be a lot of fun, and also kind of put in this special light about what this reign really means for Shelley. And we kind of talk about happy accidents with Josh Alexander getting hurt. And this created this like subplot, opened up this trap door. And here we are down this awesome story that Alex Shelley gets to prosper here as this single star. I think it's fascinating. And he's appreciating. You can tell that talking with Scott Mitchell, he really appreciates where he's at right now and the trust of the company.
Yeah, it couldn't happen to a more deserving and humble and guy like other than Alex Shelley, man. Like, he's been a company guy for a long time, excellent wrestler, and just I'm so happy for him to be in this spot, man. And I mean, wow, that's crazy to think the last time that he toured through Europe or the UK was 10 years or 11 years ago. It's 2012. Yeah, that's wild, man. Over a decade, and now he gets to go over there and be the top guy and be the face of the company. That's huge. He absolutely deserves it. And I mean, the UK fans are some of the best wrestling fans in the world, man. These crowds that we see at these UK shows, they're just the crowd is alive. Like, I mean, you see great crowds in the United States all the time, but it's just almost to a different level. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't get the American product very much. They don't get a promotion this large very often over there. So, yeah, good for the UK fans, man, getting the big three all in one spring summer. And I imagine we'll probably see this trend continue, because it looks like we've seen the sales for All In. It's already shattered the record from SummerSlam '92 that
Mm-hmm.
was there the last time, and it's Money in the Bank from this year was a good showing. I think we might see more pro wrestling in the UK from big promotions going forward, because the fans are showing up, man. You got to go where the people are willing to put butts in seats.
Yeah, and the crowd reaction creates so much of a great atmosphere, and it's an understatement in the UK what they create. And we watch even Clash at the Castle. I know that wasn't, the same place as London, but they still showed out. And there's a reason they're going to go back to Wales again. And there's a reason why they're going to go back to any other place in the UK. These fans are deserving. And I think it's inevitable. We're going to see that WrestleMania. We talked about in wrestling tonight, John Cena coming out and talking about how WrestleMania is going to come to London, or he's going to try to make it happen. They wouldn't announce that. The machine wouldn't come out there and put it out in the universe if it wasn't already in the works. So it's a matter of time before we get a big show like that at, Wembley or elsewhere. And I think, also AEW doing that and selling all these tickets, it's a matter of time before, in the recent future, WWE is going to go out of their way to smash their record, which is, is what they do, which is fine. But this is just part of the nature of competition breeds success, and all the wrestling fans get the benefit from it.
That's right, man. Everybody's eating.
Everybody's eating. And speaking of eating here, we got one of the greatest tag teams of all time reuniting for the first time in 7 years at that aforementioned 1,000 episodes in White Plains, New York. Man, Bully Ray, Devon, aka Bubba Ray Dudley, and Devon Dudley, the Dudley Boys, have been announced for Impact Wrestling's 1,000th episode. We talked about last week, the beautiful people, Angelina Love, Velvet Sky is going to be there, Awesome Kong. There will be other names, of course, celebrating the history of Impact. Maybe we'll even see Kurt Angle. Who knows? But this was cool. It was announced on Busted Open Radio. They made a big deal. This kind of sent a nice little shockwave throughout the wrestling world. Announcing this on terrestrial radio is kind of cool to have this way to do this. It kind of made Impact feel special, and Bully Ray again to announce that him and Devon will be reuniting for the first time, which is crazy to me. It's been 7 years. It seems like it was just yesterday they were teaming in Impact.
Right, man. It's wild to think about that it has been that long. I know that Devon is, had a child a couple of years back, so he's kind of been off doing the family thing, which is great. But it's going to be awesome to be able to get to see them together. I highly doubt that it will be any in-ring action. I don't think that Devon's got any interest in getting back in the ring from what I've read from him in interviews over the last couple of years, but you never know. But it's just going to be really neat to they do great work on the mic, just as good work on the mic together as they do in the ring. So it'll be really cool to see them together for that 1,000th episode.
It's wild to see their resume, and I know it's kayfabe and titles don't mean that much, but it really is. It's astounding to see the longevity and how successful they were across every promotion they were in. And they entered the Impact Hall of Fame in 2014, which, believe it or not, that's almost 10 years ago in itself, which is insane. They were TNA Tag Team Champions twice. They held the NWA World Tag Team titles while in the promotion. Talk about their influence in the WWE. 9-time WWE Tag Team Champions, 1-time WCW Tag Team Champions during the Invasion angle, 8-time ECW Tag Champs, and they're also WWE Hall of Famers. So doesn't get much better than that. And having them reuniting as Team 3D, which everyone likes to talk about, the Impact Zone meme and stuff, where teams, they're basing it off the WWE success. You could make the argument that they were just as successful in Impact as they were WWE and elsewhere. They kind of are a well-rounded team that's kind of a brand in its own. Team 3D, Dudley Boys, whatever you want to call them, Bully Ray, Bubba Ray, doesn't matter. These guys are just legends.
Yeah, man. They got as stacked of a resume that you can have as a tag team. And yeah, from ECW to WWE to Impact. I mean, they made their presence known and made their way in every promotion. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you could say that you could argue that they were equally as successful everywhere that they went.
Oh, 100%. And we'll sure talk about them coming up in the upcoming weeks. Bully Ray's been on our TVs weekly. We'll, of course, talk about him from the main event. But let's get to the blow by blow and talk about everything that happened on the August 10th, 2023 Impact on Access from Chicago, Illinois.
Blow by blow.
All right, the blow by blow. We have our second half of the Chicago Heat tapings from Cicero Stadium in Chicago. Awesome crowd. it was interesting before we get into the breakdown on BTI. We had Kevin Knight defeating Champagne Singh with Shira in his corner. Uh, the crazy part is with the way spoilers get dropped here, and if you search for any spoilers, you're going to find them. But the way that these spoilers were filtered in, I was talking about it last week. You couldn't find the results of the night from the week we reviewed last week, but these results were out immediately. I think also because of the wrestling we had on this card, whether it be the opening match here and also that Speedball versus Kushida match, which we'll get into. I think people were just really wowed by this second night of action. And by all accounts, people in attendance said this was the better half of the Chicago Heat tapings.
Yeah, no disrespect to last week's show by any means, but this card from top to bottom was, like I said, this might be the best episode of Weekly TV we've covered since we started Race for Impact. It was incredible.
So they do a video highlighting last week's events when Trinity and Deonna Purrazzo catching us up to speed with them. Leo Rush, Moose, and Bully Ray and the Rascals picking up the victory over Mike Bailey and John Gresham. I do like this entering the show because if you have a fan that kind of, for whatever reason, they're tuning in for the first time, it catches them up to speed, makes sure they're aware. And they do a good job of putting that throughout the night to make you aware of what's going on the screen and why you should care about some of these characters. But it's an old school tactic that some of the old shows used to do. Raw used to do it. Nitro used to do it, just catching you up to speed. And it takes 30 seconds. And it was so well done to me because it was like, okay, we have the Knockouts division champion kind of settled here. We have the other main event people kind of settled and showing all the shenanigans the Rascals are pulling off. Now you're kind of, damn, I know all three main storylines going on in front of us.
I love it that they do it every week, even though I watch weekly and I remember what happened. I love it because it kind of shows you what from the previous week you need to focus on for what we're setting up for this week. It's a great tactic. And also too, just the blessing and curse of being a pro wrestling fan in 2023. If you're like us, you might need a refresher because of just for the sheer amount of content you watch in a week, you're going to forget some shit. We're watching, if you're managing to watch Impact, WWE, and AEW every single week, first of all, I don't know how you have time for a job, but yeah, you're going to forget a thing or two. And a nice little, 30-second to a minute recap is not that hard and really sets you up for success as a viewer and as a promotion furthering storyline.
So we get right into the action. We have this number one contenders tag team tournament. It's a eliminator tournament to decide who's going to be taking on Subculture for the tag team titles at Emergence. And this is a semifinals match here. Rich Swann and Sami Callihan defeated ABC in what was an awesome opening contest. You and I were texting. There were some great spots in this match. A lot of things went down in this match that I don't believe we expected, especially, the finish itself. Rich Swann and Sami Callihan going over. I thought we were ticketed to get ABC. Somewhat involved. I thought for sure that they were going to be back in the tag title picture, but they're moving away from them. And now Rich Swann and Sami Callihan have the opportunity to possibly take on Subculture. And that's what's kind of interesting about this Eliminator tournament. These are results I did not expect, especially all the shenanigans that went on inside this match.
Same here, man. I thought ABC was a dead ringer to get back to in the title picture. Whether they win it or not, it'd mean a lot to see Subculture get a win over them, or another definitive win over them, besides the contractual rematch there. But yeah, this was a great opener. Just even the intros coming down to the ring, man. I really enjoyed the camera work with with Rich Swann and Sami Callihan's intro tonight. They really felt like a solidified unit. Sammy always gets up in the camera's face during his intro music and screams Death Machine, but Rich Swann was doing it too and going cross-eyed and looking wild and crazy. Just great presentation all around the night. Killer spots in this match. Sami Callihan hit a Cactus Driver 97 on the apron.
I was going to ask you about that. Your thoughts? It looked brutal. Like when he hit it and bounced off.
Yeah.
I love that spot because it's akin to Mick Foley. I love any sort of homage to the legend that is Mick Foley, but any sort of apron spot, especially a pile driver.
Yeah,
man, we're fresh in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Well, that move is banned. Never mind on the apron.
Yeah,
that move's just banned. So I think 1994 has my brain looking at that move a lot different.
That'll get you a couple of weeks to go work in All Japan if you're in it, man. If you're Chris Candido. I love apron spots, man. It was I'll be the devil's advocate, when AEW came out a few weeks ago, but the moves that they are discouraged or banned or have to be pre-approved, the apron spots was the first one that got me pissed off. But I also look at it now, so just like we did, going back to Smoky Mountain Wrestling 1994, putting it out there to the fans that it's banned or it has to be pre-approved gives it a little bit more notoriety when you do actually see it. I feel like it's having the exact intended effect right here that you and I are here talking about it. But yeah, it was a stiff one, man, for sure.
But dude, all right. So the shenanigans that went down, the fact that the Good Hands got involved in this, and I love the Good Hands as we were very high on them, and I know they've been kind of treated as enhancement level in this tag division. I think there's a lot of potential, especially in John Skyler. I like what I've seen in him. Both guys are amazing, but your thoughts on the Good Hands getting involved and potentially starting this little under feud with ABC, which would be great for the Good Hands. It could help rise them up to potentially a level that Subculture got to almost overnight at Slammiversary.
And I think that's the intention. I think the Good Hands, we've been seeing them on our screen more and more over the last month and a half. I think this is for them to transition out of being enhancement talent. And I think that's perfect timing. And who better to elevate them than ABC? So I didn't see the Good Hands getting involved coming from a mile away. That it totally took me off guard. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, I assumed that ABC was going to win this match, but even before the interference, just the match itself, the whole time I thought it could have gone either way. So adding that extra surprise in there with the Good Hands getting involved to make the finish, and from what it looked like, Sami Callihan didn't even see that Skyler got the cheap shot in on ABC. So it was that's another interesting layer as far as Sami Callihan is concerned. He probably thinks he got a clean win with no assist there.
Yeah, this checks a lot of boxes here. Of course, match quality, it was there. Storytelling, it's there. Enhancing another team and getting them up the ladder, it was there. And also starting a feud with the Good Hands. And while ABC is not going to get their tag team championship match at Emergence, which everyone expected them to get, they have another match. I mean, and now the Good Hands and ABC are going to go out there and put on, in my mind, one of the best matches of whatever card they decide to put them on. I love it. Jason Hotch and John Skyler being involved in main storytelling here and not just being used as enhancement fodder, which that has a role on a card. And I understand paying your dues and sometimes it's not your time. I think right now getting the Good Hands to rise up in this tag division, it just shows what they're really good at doing. And like you and I were talking about the Subculture win, the reaction to Slammiversary and saying, especially in the preview, we didn't think it was going to happen yet. But now that we're looking at it a month later and being like, why not? Like, because at this point, do the Rascals need the titles to enhance their feud? Probably not. I think at this point, now you're making Subculture into a team that is on the same level. And now you're doing the same thing with the Good Hands, and the tag division's better for it. So again, same thing we're talking about the Knockouts division. I think a lot of promotions could use what they're doing in this tag division. There's story going on, not involving just the titles. I mean, of course, the goal is for everyone to be the champion, but there's also this intrinsic motivation to beat the shit out of each other because you have personal issues with each other. And now the Good Hands are now jumping into the volley, and man, it's a lot of fun. I was very impressed with the match quality, but also the story that happened throughout this match.
Yeah, we really got the best of both worlds in this opener between story and match quality. And looking at what they're doing with the tag division right now, we haven't really seen Subculture in the ring except for their first contractual rematch with ABC going up against them that first week after Slammiversary. I mean, they showed it tonight. They were out at other indie promotions defending the titles. So while they're out running, making towns, promoting Impact at other shows and looking strong, we're able to build 3 teams simultaneously in the division, all on weekly TV without taking anything away from the champions. We still got a vignette from them later in the show. It's just it's pretty impressive. The whatever the Impact tag team storytelling formula is, it works. And yeah, I think other promotions could definitely take a page out of their book.
Yeah, and Swan and Callahan, and we reference them as a hodgepodge team going into the Slammiversary build. Here they are weeks later. And I know Sammy has his hands full at the Multiverse show, but for the most part, they've been a cohesive team. And you mentioned sort of the mannerisms, the entrance, everything about them felt tag team appropriate. And it wasn't just 2 main event ex-world champions being put together because there's nothing else going on. It's now starting to feel like they're a cohesive unit, and the division's better for it. And I like the unpredictability factor of this match. I mean, I can't say enough nice things. And really seeing the good hands get a nice spot here. And even if they wind up losing the match eventually against ABC, that's okay, man. But them in a big spot on a pay-per-view down the line, sign me up. Hotch and Skylar are ready to shine. And I think seeing what they can do on a big stage, it's a matter of time before, you know, they start to be a team you build around and give them the titles. They could be the subculture this time next year or even before that.
I completely agree.
So backstage, we have Santino Marella. He was talking about, you know, just enjoying that there's a little bit of peace going on now. And he's interrupted by the Coven and the Death Dolls. The teams were pretty much stating that they deserve to be the Knockouts World Tag Team Champions, and they want a match at Emergence. Santino's kind of mulling over what decision he should make. Masha and Killer Kelly show up, and then Kelly said, who cares, dude? We'll take on all of them at Emergence. And it seems like we have our match slotted here with the Coven and Death Dolls taking on MK Ultra. Your thoughts on this? I mean, they did a lot of the cinematic stuff with the Death Dolls. They showed a little bit of the way they present it. And they did this a few times tonight with the way the camera caught things. Impact is kind of showing off in a lot of ways that I think really benefited. So your thoughts on this?
I like it fine, man. I mean, it's gonna be a crowded ring for this match because this will be 4 teams now, right?
All right, you're exactly right. It would be 4 teams.
Yeah, so I mean, this is gonna be a crowded one, but like we said, it's gets everybody in basically the entirety of the women's tag division some exposure, which is a good thing. If we're going to have this many shows during the summer, why not there's no excuse to not have somebody on one of these cards. So I'm all for it. I'm sure every team is incredibly talented. It'll be a good match.
Our next match here, Dirty Dango with Alpha Bravo in his corner, defeated Bhupinder Guhar. Match was in pretty much a squash match. Dango got on the mic prior saying he hates pro wrestling. That was pretty much the story throughout it. And we've talked about this at length. Dirty Dango's despise how he hates wrestling and all that good stuff here. We saw a bit out of Bhupinder. He got some offense in this. This is the way enhancement matches have been used here, where you get spurts of hope, but obviously knocked down. Dango grounding Guhar and throwing him to the floor, and he got the win. I mean, it was easy for him, but the story, Colton, I'll let you take the lead on this after, with Dango on the mic and starts putting down wrestling again. We see Jake Something, the specimen that he's become, took some umbrance with what he was saying about wrestling because of what it's done for him. So he was pissed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I just want to loop into, I don't want to leave out Alpha Bravo here. The fact that Dirty Dango staying true to his name, because I don't remember the last time Old Dirty got himself a clean win. Alpha Bravo flashed him with the strobing flashlight. Was the best distraction I think I've seen in wrestling in the last 5 years. But yeah, Jake Something coming out, basically getting in Dango's face, asking him, does he have any idea how long it's taken him, being Jake Something, to get to where he is, to get back to Impact Wrestling, and basically tells Dango, if you hate it so much, get the fuck out. Like, you know, there's the door. Take a walk. And he says, if you don't want to, you can either go or I can make you. And, you know, Dango slowly sneaks out of the ring. Alpha Bravo stays in. Dango tries to be sneaky like he always is and get a cheap one on Jake, but he must have eyes growing in the back of his head because he saw him coming and it looked like he knocked Dango out cold with the right hand.
Oh, yeah. Nice little rolling discus arm, knocked him out. And I like what they're doing with Dirty Dango. Really. And Jake Something, man, I was gushing over him before. Just he's like Hercules Hernandez. If this dude was around with the athleticism and the body, this guy would be the biggest thing in 1986. You know what I mean? Like, he is absolutely a dream professional wrestler, and I'm glad he's getting the opportunity on the stage. But Dirty Dango, like it's interesting because this anti-wrestling gimmick has been done before, but not with the type of flair that Dirty Dango is doing, especially coming from a place like WWE and having the poise that he got from being on that stage. It shows. And, you know, I had the pleasure of seeing Dirty Dango on the Independence I think it was last year. I forget what year. It was at VPW. Nicest guy, but just he has a certain aura about him that he definitely he attracts attention in a good way. And I know Dirty Dango would have been well versed to just do the WWE Legacy Act on whatever promotion he decides to go to and just do the dance and do everything he was doing elsewhere. But he decides to reinvent himself. And I have the utmost respect for that, being able to find a different way to be interesting. And Dirty Dango looks better than ever, first of all. Body type. I mean, the guy's fantastic. And we're going to see a little mini program with Jake something. I'm kind of into it.
I'm very into it, man. Dango is probably my favorite heel in Impact right now, and he's up there for favorite heel in wrestling for me right now. I love his presentation, man. It's I feel like I'm seeing some shades of Dirty Dango's current character in Jack Perry week to week right now too. Just kind of in his whole just attitude and kind of laissez-faire vibe all around to him. I'm really here for it, and I've been wondering what we're going to do with Jake something, especially considering he did not win the Ultimate X match that he came back and as a surprise debut at Slammiversary. Been wondering what they're going to do with him. This is going to be a great program to start him out in. These guys are going to have these guys are going to have killer matches. I'm really looking forward to it.
For Jake something on your end, I mean, looking at trajectory and the top of the card is very crowded with guys that are up and coming. And it's just we're going to talk about the main event in a little bit, just about the amount of guys that they can go in any direction and make them the person they put the championship on. What right now is the ceiling for, like, I guess the rest of 2023 going into 2024 in Impact for Jake something? Is it the Digital Media Championship? Is it just main programs with guys like Dirty Dango getting some steam behind him? Because to me, he could be a top guy. Like, you could book him similar to Brian Cage in Impact, how Brian was presented on the Impact side of things. And we know how great that was. So your thoughts on Jake something and where it looks like for him in the future?
I mean, I think his ceiling is only set for the rest of 2023, just because the only reason it has a limit is because we're less than 6 months out from the year ending. I mean, I think I could see him taking the Digital Media Championship. I could also see him running through. I mean, he's going to run through everybody that they put him up against. That's just all there is to it. So I could also see him running through anybody who's anybody between now and December, and say late winter or beginning of spring. I could absolutely see him being the guy going for the big belt. That wouldn't surprise me whatsoever.
100%. I'm looking forward to it because I do enjoy his work, and I think he's a good blend of the current style plus what was aesthetically pleasing about that golden era of WWF. Like, he fits kind of and checks both boxes. But we're going to talk about this video promo that aired with Diener talking about Eric Young and addressing what happened last week. Khan stood behind him menacingly with this red light. Diener said he's never felt more powerful because of guys like Khan standing behind him, and pretty much said that the design pretty much was representing through a guy like Khan this whole time. And Khan also, they're referencing the show next week where they're hyping up the match that Eric Young and Khan will wrestle for the first time since Young's been back. And this is a big match here. And I think the big bad is Diener for Eric Young, but having a match with Khan on Impact, this is what you've been waiting for. Short vignette, but you have any strong feelings on this, or do you feel like it's kind of where we've been?
I loved this vignette, actually, and I thought it was a really good, we kind of dogged on the vignette from Eric Young at the end of the show last week.
Revisionist history of the stabbing. Yes.
Revisionist history of the stabbing, yeah. And this kind of brought it back for me. This really, this was a good enough promo that it kind of snapped me right back into this storyline. I can go ahead and, forgive and forget last week's, motorcycle riding, just whatever that was. It wasn't for me. I thought this was great. I thought, you basically have Diener wigging out, talking about how the issues with the design have not been issues of his leadership or his mistakes or failures. It's been issues of betrayal. It's been issues of infiltration from Sami Callihan. And if it has anything to do with anybody's failures, it was Eric Young's. First of all, I want to say that I think Cody Diener has better crazy eyes than anybody in the wrestling business. Like,
for sure,
dude looks fucking insane. Like when he really gets that just far away look in his eye, nobody does it better. And Khan got some. I liked that Khan spoke up in this promo too, and that he said, he called Eric Young a sheep that had lost his family, and that so when he looks around, all he's going to see is the big bad wolf. And I'm assuming he's referring to himself as the big bad wolf. He's a big bad wolf looking dude. So yeah, I thought this was a good setup. And I think this is right where we need to be with Eric Young. There's obviously unfinished business, and this will be a good match next week.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying about the stuff we talked about for the final vignette to end the show with Eric Young and surviving the stabbing, and as critical as we were of it, I think it speaks to the conversation we had during the news cycle, talking about how they're able to take risks without really being able to be shattered. And of course, people are probably critical. I didn't see what the reaction was on social media or anything like that, but they have the ability to do that because the diehards will come back, and they have the opportunity to do something like this is video promo, the creativity to just stay the course or pivot if they need to, but they have the opportunity to take these risks. So when they do fail, sometimes it doesn't harm them as badly. We would still be talking about AEW if they did something like this, or WWE on their end, and kind of dropping the ball with how storytelling works. And people still talk about the barbed wire death match, the lack of explosion in Eddie Kingston. For Impact, this is just one of those things where it didn't hit, and that's okay. There's going to be other things that do hit, and that's the courage that they have to continue to just throw stuff out there and take risks and be different than other promotions. It should be applauded, because other promotions want to stay the course and they don't want to upset people. And there's going to be certain fans that are upset about certain styles of things, but Impact continually challenges and pushes the buttons of how could we be different and separate ourselves from the other two promotions? Because we're not going to be them. And I think, this is another example of just being themselves and being Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, and it's them being themselves is and always will continue to work for me.
Absolutely. And backstage, we have Gia Miller. She's with Johnny Swinger and talking about everything that happened with Ziggy Dice 2 weeks prior at this point.
Yeah.
And Gia asked him, are you going to be challenging for the world title? Because now, being that you won this match against Ziggy, you're supposed to be getting a title shot. Before Swinger could really say anything, we had Kenny King and Sheldon Jean interrupting. Kenny King kind of took the spotlight here, cut a promo on Alex Shelley. I believe he called him Alex Smelly, which I wasn't sure if he did, but
he did.
I guess he did. You're nodding over there. And Swinger was questioning Miller on what the internet was. And because Kenny King cut a great promo about saying that the Digital Media Championship is larger than the World Championship because it covers all the satellites all throughout the galaxy. And Kenny King was great here. But also, Johnny Swinger was great too. They, making fun of that he's old and leaning into it as well. Good shit.
Yeah, what's the internet, Daddy? I loved that, man. This was great. Impact does this kind of shit best of any of the three promotions. And like we've said the last couple of weeks, the backstage promos and segments have definitely become more common and improved on the AEW side. And I'm 100% will attribute that to Jimmy Jacobs moving over there. And it's been, we didn't need this. The show didn't need this promo, but the fact that we had it, it reminded us of what had happened with Johnny Swinger, reminded us he's still an Impact. And then also with no Digital Media Championship match scheduled for this week, still keeps Kenny King fresh in our minds, keep that belt fresh in our minds, and adds another layer to his character by calling out the world champ and talking shit on Alex Shelley. I thought it was great.
You referenced the Jimmy Jacobs thing. We've talked about it a lot. I see a lot of that in this MJF Adam Cole stuff, those vignettes they've been showing, and just how they're filmed, and how they're just the one that they just had at the dodgeball thing they did at the trampoline park for the one on Dynamite this week. That could have been straight from Impact. And I'd be damned if Impact didn't have an influence. So it's Jimmy Jacobs in the room saying, this is how you get people to react a certain type of way. And the way it's filmed and shot and cut and all of that, there's a certain type of, there's an aesthetic for that. And it works. It really does. Big platform or small, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. The video work had Impact written all over it on that segment.
So let's get to the next match here. Alicia Edwards taking on Jody Threat with Eddie Edwards in his corner. And Jody was dominating the match. Alicia Edwards is much smaller than her. This is a story of big versus small and power. Alicia trying to catch a break, and she's not able to really get any momentum in this match. there was a lot of story happening outside the ring, and mostly was the stuff that happened after the match. But of course, Jody Threat got the win, over Alicia. She's the one being pushed here. It's not about Alicia Edwards. It's about Jody Threat's rise up the Knockouts division card. But we saw kind of a tales old as time. Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we watched, the story of accidental women getting involved and being hit, and talk about Dirty White Girl got DDT'd by Jake Roberts. Or you can even go back to the Mega Powers with Miss Elizabeth being kind of tossed to the side by Macho Man and all this stuff, and Hogan carrying her to the back. Man, Kazarian's acting here when he went to swing at Eddie and he hit Alicia, knocking her out, and watching her just be carried out, and how his reaction, security trying to take him out, saying he wasn't trying to do this. And I thought this was really well done. And this is a trope in wrestling that's been used over and over again, but elicits sympathy, especially with the connection with Alicia and Eddie, that they are married, like they're a real life couple, and there's real emotion because you'd imagine yourself in the situation. So simple, but so well done.
Yeah, very well done. And a great way to breathe more life into this Frankie Kazarian, Eddie Edwards storyline, which is kind of taking a pause. We didn't get any resolution with it at Slammiversary, but it's kind of taken a pause the last few weeks, and this was a great way to bring it back. But yeah, man, you said it. Frankie deserves an Emmy for that performance. The genuine concern that you saw on his face, I mean, it made you think that, like, he didn't, obviously this is scripted. Obviously this was planned, but he sold it so well that, like, yeah, it was an unintended byproduct for Alicia to get smacked by the kendo stick and get hurt here. I thought this was a quick segment. Great for Jody to pick up a win and continue, building her. Not a huge win, but it's a win under her belt. Continues pushing her forward. But just I was wondering where this storyline was going to go next. And this, like you said, it's recycled, but it was done well. And this sets up the next chapter of Frankie Kazarian, Eddie Edwards, chapter 2 very well.
So we're to assume this is happening, in your opinion, at Emergence, Kazarian, Eddie Edwards down the line, or are we going to get this on a payoff on a bigger Impact show, potentially on the UK tour? Like, what are we thinking for this?
I think it's going to be at Emergence, but I wouldn't be surprised if Emergence isn't the end of it either.
I mean, it's nice because you have two veterans that have accomplished a lot in the wrestling business, and they're busy. And we talk about this, keeping wrestlers busy and meaningful stories that don't involve the World Championship or other championships. And I can't imagine either one of these guys at any moment, especially where we talk about the crowded nature of every single division and who's gunning for those titles. I can't see them being involved in title pictures anytime soon. So I think it's the perfect antidote to keep them on the card because they have a lot to give. And Kazarian, we talked about him being utilized on the AEW roster or lack thereof, involved with SCU and had great meaningful stuff with AEW. But this is the type of stuff he came to Impact for. This is why he's back with Impact, why he's going to be staying there. And working with a guy like Eddie, it's like, you get to enjoy two guys that have done a lot in this business and continue to showcase why they're the best, one of the best at what they do in the company.
Yeah, and the fact that, the younger guys on the roster coming up, being able to see Eddie and Frankie in a storyline like this. I mean, that's you don't get a much better learning tree than being able to sit under Eddie Edwards and Frankie Kazarian on the same night, man.
So we have Deonna Purrazzo in the back, and she was saying that she wants to congratulate Kylan King on beating her last week, and she issued a challenge to King one-on-one in a match going forward. We were kind of critical of this, especially with Deonna being pinned going into her big rematch for the championship, and I don't think we think that Trinity is going to lose her championship so quickly, but I don't know. I'll never get behind a number one contender losing on the build to a show unless it's done perfectly. And good for Kylan King getting the win here. That's kind of lost in the sauce of everything we discussed last week about how it hurts Deonna. But what we really didn't consider is how it helps Kylan. Now she could say she beat Deonna Purrazzo and everything that she's accomplished kind of goes into her. Maybe that goes away if Deonna beats her pretty handily, but I can see this being a very competitive match coming up, Colton. And it kind of speaks to the depth of the women's division. Kylan King is just another one of these women that at any single time you can heat them up and get them ready to be a challenger for a big championship.
Absolutely. And nobody can take that win away from Kylan King. A win's a win. Even if it was a tag win, she still got it over her, man. And I think, I'm with you. I don't love the idea of having a number one contender take a loss leading up. But if it's ever going to happen and make sense, now's the time for it because it is a contractual rematch. So it really doesn't matter what happens with Peraza between now and then. She's getting this rematch anyways because she gets one contractually for being the champion. So I mean, they could have Kylan King beat her here. I hope they don't. I feel like just cooling Deanna off that much before would take away, because I think Trinity Deanna Purrazzo 2 is going to be a banger of a match, and I don't think we need to cool it off any more than we already have with her original loss. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're really not. Deanna Purrazzo's got such a good record that you're not going to hurt her. If we won't remember if Kylan King picks up this win over her next week, we're not going to remember this a year from now. No one will.
So we move into our match here. Mike Bailey and Kushida having an absolute classic here in Chicago, back and forth. And of course, Kushida has a lot of steam behind him. These guys have some history as well, teaming up on Impact shows, but also involved in the X Division Championship picture. Kushida's right now the number one contender for the X Division Championship when he deems fit to take on Chris Sabin down the line. And these guys went out here and had one hell of a match, one of the best types of matches you're ever going to see on a weekly TV show. Very similar styles, but so different in the way they approach matches, and akin to a chess match, a game of wits in the beginning where you can see there's a mutual respect and a one-upmanship that these guys continually try to challenge each other. The flow of this match was great. Watching just kind of sequence between the ground and pound to catch can style to high flying, and then focusing on body parts and submission and telling the story from start to finish. What really was the end of the match too, with ultimately Speedball Mike Bailey is tough as nails, but couldn't sustain the end of the match here, where Kushida just outsmarted him and out wrestled him. And that was the story in a small package here where we fit it neatly onto the show. You could show this match to anybody and they can kind of understand what pro wrestling is and why people like it. I think this, can't say enough nice and good things about this match. Speedball is just fantastic, but Kushida, everyone kind of gets stuck on this time splitter gimmick, and maybe they look at him as not as technically sound as he really is because he has a little bit of the comedic flair to his presentation. But goddamn, dude, this match was absolutely incredible. I don't think there was a match on TV this week that was better. Raw, Dynamite. I think this was the best match so far this week. We'll see what happens on Friday and for Collision, but this is the match of the week thus far, including SummerSlam, by the way.
Oh, 100%. This was incredible. And I think having Kushida get the win over Mike Bailey here, I think was very perfect timing, because I think you said it yourself. Maybe people don't think of Kushida as in the same league as far as technically sound, because he does have a little bit of the comedic presentation. And I think him getting the win over Bailey here solidifies that he is absolutely on the same level as Mike Bailey or anybody in this X division. I mean, he's the number one contender for a reason. And this match was great. This could have been the main event for any promotion.
Yeah.
Anywhere at any week, man. This could have been a pay-per-view. This was a pay-per-view main event level match. This was incredible.
Yeah, the trading of strikes between the match and then also locking in the armbar really emphasized how tough Kushida is to outstand the submission, because the pain was there. You could see in Kushida's face, and man, having him hit the Back to the Future to end the match and seeing both their faces as ends, and just Kushida had to overcome. This is how it's done, man. And do I see Kushida beating Chris Sabin for the X Division Championship? Maybe that's the story they're going for, where Chris Sabin's going to be gunning for potentially the World Championship down the line. But we talked about the Slammiversary thing, and I predicted Kushida to win just because of the stock they had in Kushida prior. But just in a few short weeks, they've heated Kushida up at this point where he's one of the hottest acts in Impact right now. Unassumingly, he goes in there every single week and steals the show. And Speedball Mike Bailey, dude, everyone stop sleeping on this guy. He is just unbelievable. He's the full package to me. And he's like Ricky Steamboat with like RVD's moveset. Like, gosh, he's just fantastic.
When he came out tonight, I was like, or just watching, I've been familiar with Speedball Mike Bailey. I've had the opportunity to see him live 2 or 3 times at Impact shows over the last couple of years, and yeah, man, this guy, he has it all. And I was thinking, the more and more I watch him wrestle, I think I'm like, man, yeah, Ricky Steamboat all over the place, man. He's got a very, and you hit the nail on the head saying Ricky Steamboat with RVD's moveset. It's, man, yeah, you ought to trademark that description, Ace. That was perfect.
Dude, and the double knee thing, we've seen clips of it. There's a crazy clip from an indie show where he hits the double knee on someone's back, and just the cell job. It might have just been a very stiff double knee to the back, but that move, like, very unique finisher. Wrestling with no shoes, you already gained my respect as well. As far as the top of the list of the Mount Rushmore of shoeless wrestlers, I mean, there's not many. Jimmy Snuka, Matt Riddle, Umaga didn't wear shoes, right? Who else?
Right.
I mean, Miro didn't wear shoes in WWE. As Rusev.
Toa from Gates of Agony.
So there you go. So we need to make a Mount Rushmore of shoeless wrestlers, but Speedball Mike Bailey is on that list. I mean, the fact he's wearing the kick pads over the bare feet, it's fantastic.
It is, man. And like you talk about that double knee, not only is it a devastating move, but tonight he transitioned from an armbar by backflipping into a double knee drop. It's just, the athleticism of this guy is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you guys have not been watching Speedball Mike Bailey, you're missing out. I mean, he's been showing, he won Bola, for God's sake. So he's a guy I chose to break out in the general public for 2023. But his GCW run, his time in Impact, if you see him on a local card to you, if he comes to your area, go out of your way to see this dude go out there and show out, because there's a lot of great wrestling on every single card. But I don't think anyone's doing what Speedball's doing on a weekly basis. He's so unique to professional wrestling at a time where it's hard to be unique. He continues to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming to smaller towns. He's still doing it. He's still, the guy's out there working. So, like I said, if you see him coming and you haven't seen him before, absolutely go see him. The guy, I mean, he's been in the PWI 500 top list for three different years, and for good reason. He's gonna stay there and only continue to climb up as his career goes on.
Yeah, I'm not wishing him away from Impact, because I think this is a great place because of the creativity and the ability to go and work these independents and GCW and have the flexibility in his schedule. But if you put the machine behind him, if you put Stamford, Connecticut behind him, I think this guy could just, man, I think he's fantastic and just unbelievable. But in a time when wrestling, it's hard to be unique, he continues to do that every single week. Backstage, you have Tom Hannafin. He's with Crazy Steve. This was an interview taped earlier in the day. Tom Hannafin is requesting to do the interview, and he wanted to, because Steve wanted to clarify what was going on with him. He said he felt abandoned by the actions of the Death Dolls and Black Taurus. Steve is talking about being legally blind, has been wrestling now for over 20 years. He said he's dealt with a roadblock after roadblock, and Hannafin said that could have been easy, but kind of touched on a nerve here for Crazy Steve, asking about his family. Steve kind of looked upset, but kept his cool and said that's an interesting question. And before he was able to answer, we got a to be continued graphic on the screen, so we have to wait till next week to hear what Crazy Steve had to say. Big fan of Crazy Steve. We saw him coming back here, a nice addition to the roster. It's interesting how he ties in with the Death Dolls, especially with the new presentation on their end. How are they going to figure out a way to tie this all together? Has me at least intrigued.
Oh, I'm very intrigued. I love Crazy Steve. I've got to see him. He's done a lot of work with Ohio Valley Wrestling here in Louisville. Got to see him at Impact shows as well. Absolutely incredible talent. And the fact that he's getting a platform to tell his story. I love when wrestling pulls from reality. He's getting to do that here. The to be continued, man, they've got me on the hook. I can't wait to see more of this next week.
So we have video footage, as you were referencing before, of Subculture defending their Impact World Tag Team Championships against the Greedy Souls. This is from Attack Pro Wrestling. This was cool to see and has me kind of optimistic potentially that maybe they'll use some footage for Remarkable Wrestling down the line, especially with Chris Sabin and also Alex Shelley coming to town. And we announced for Own the Night, Chris Sabin going to be wrestling Kono Capuccia, and also Alex Shelley going to be wrestling Tristan Tai. So, cheap plug here, September 16th. If you're in the Long Island area, make sure you guys check out Remarkable Wrestling Own the Night. But yeah, it was cool to see Attack Pro Wrestling be showcased here. Subculture with some stiff ass offense on the Greedy Souls. And we got a promo from Subculture, Danny Luna in their corner, saying they're looking forward to defend their titles against whoever winds up winning this Eliminator tournament. We kind of copy and paste what we were talking about before with the tag division. Subculture, they heated them up, and here they are at the same level as the rest of the tag teams, and they feel like a big deal. These titles don't feel like they're bigger than them, and maybe that was kind of the conversation leading in the Slamverse. You're like, maybe it's not quite there yet. We want to keep them on ABC, but I'm ready to eat some crow. I think Subculture getting the titles was the right time at Slammiversary.
I agree, and I'm happy to see the belts on them, and I'm excited. I hope we get to see them on weekly TV in action here soon before Emergence. It'd be nice to get some. I mean, the promos are great, but I'd like to see them. Maybe. I mean, I know the tournament's going up, but it'd be at least nice to see them. Maybe have a singles match with somebody. I'd like to see some in ring from them before we get to Emergence. Shout out to Tyson in the comment. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. Thanks for hanging with us.
What up, TNT? Thanks for hanging with us tonight. And we had a backstage promo, and this was more of the cinematic nature and getting Joe Hendry on our TV. And it's a promo of a man asking a woman to say his name, insinuating that she was cheating on him. As soon as she said say his name, Joe Hendry appeared, and then followed by Yua Uemura to Hendry's music. So this led into this whole discussion potentially of maybe the new direction Joe Hendry needs is Yua Uemura and him tagging and winning the tag titles. And again, we talk about the depth of the tag division. Why the hell not? I think these guys have a lot of chemistry. Ultimately, I think Yua has bigger and better things to do in New Japan Pro Wrestling down the line. But for now, have him here in Impact, this would be a cool way to keep both of these guys busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the segment started off, it looked like him and Uemura were going to break up and go their separate ways. And then Uemura said champions with an S and roped him into the idea of a tag team title. I enjoy this segment. You can put Joe Hendry on anything. I'm going to like it. This was good, man. And I think, yeah, like you said, why not? We've got the good hands coming in. They've obviously going to get some heat with ABC here, but they're not going to get a shot at the title anytime soon. I mean, obviously it's going to be the winner of the tournament who's got the shot at Emergence. Let's bring another team in here to spice up the batch.
100%. Tyson, I also believe in Joe and Yua as well. So those guys continue to. And it would be great to have, as long as they're on our screen. I think even this small dose of Joe Hendry on our screen, what was it? Probably not even 40 seconds of just his appearance on the screen. It was memorable. The song, everything about it. So, more Joe Hendry on our screen on a weekly basis. We also got the announcement about Team 3D, as we talked about during the news segment. They're going to be reuniting on Impact 1000. It was officially announced on Busted Open Radio, also social media. So, this is their official announcement. And like we said, if you guys missed what we talked about, it is awesome to see Devon and Bubba Ray going back here to Impact. And again, time flies, man. 2014 is when they went in the Impact Hall of Fame. It's insane to think about, but awesome to see that they're really putting a lot of importance and stock into this 1000th episode. Because as we said, Nitro only made the 288. And there's not many wrestling companies that had 1000. We're covering Smoky Mountain Wrestling. We're finishing it up in the next 2 weeks. Goddamn, they rose and then fell pretty damn quickly in 3 years. So Impact's been around doing their thing. Some of the highest highs and the lowest lows, but they're still around. Consistent booking throughout. And this is probably the best version. I know it's, we're in it right now and it's recency bias, but to me, Impact is doing more consistent storytelling than they've ever done in such a consistent way. So may not be as high as the Kurt Angle Samoa Joe days, but I like what they're doing here nowadays more than ever. Caught my attention immediately.
Same here, man. It's a hell of an achievement to hit 1000 shows, and I'm sure it's going to be. It's definitely won't disappoint. It's going to be one not to miss.
So we get a video promo talking about Sonata appearing on Emergence later this month, showing a showcase of him. We know that Sonata is the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. He's been busy in the G1. He won his block. He's going to be in the quarterfinals. So, I mean, it's kind of a detriment not to have the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion at Multiverse United, but he will be at Emergence. The relationship continues. Sonata is going to be an Impact, which is a big deal. So it's going to be some good stuff as we lead into the main event, Colton, our main event of the night. A great big match feel here with a lot of different guys here in Chicago. Crowd was into this. Brian Myers, Bully Ray, and Moose taking on Black Taurus, Laredo Kid, and what we thought would be the debut of Samurai Del Sol, aka Kalisto, and WWE in a 6-man tag team match. But it's not to be. Del Sol was attacked prior to the match by Leo Rush. We get the clip of that. So unfortunately for Black Taurus and Laredo Kid, they got to go at this one man down, Colton.
Yeah, 2-on-3 handicap style. I can't think of a better two guys to be able to handle those odds, though, other than Black Taurus and Laredo Kid. Fun fact, Black Taurus is one of my top 3 favorite presentations in pro wrestling today. I love the guy. He's incredible, just from his look to his in-ring style, even just the fact that he's so explosive. I mean, he can just catch on fire at any minute and take off, but he's also so sturdy. It's the first Impact show I ever went to, he was there, and I actually, because I unfortunately don't keep up with AAA as much as I should, or a lot of Lucha Libre, and that was my first introduction. I had no idea who Black Taurus was until I saw him about 3 years ago, and it blew my mind. So it's the first time we've seen him on Impact TV in quite a while. I was very, very excited. But yeah, like you said, this match did not go down exactly how we thought it would, with Samurai Del Sol getting taken out in the back by Leo Rush. Obviously, it looks like Leo Rush is at least agreeing to trust Moose Myers and Bully Ray, and to work together as a crew of sorts. But this was still a good match. Black Taurus really gave Bully Ray a run for his money in the ring. Laredo Kid hit a great Hurricane Rana on Moose. But the real story told in this match tonight was a return of someone that I don't think either of us expected to be back so soon. The French Canadian Frankenstein himself, PCO.
Loved it. I love that he's back here. I also loved, shout out to the picture-in-picture showing the faces watching the contest as well. That was a nice touch to a lot of times the simple things a lot of wrestling promotions don't think of, but seeing the faces have an interest in what's going on in the ring, that was cool to see as well. So thought this match was good. I mean, obviously you thought the heels were going to win, and maybe the logic is you don't want Samurai Del Sol losing in his debut match here. But begs the question, why would you book him in that match if that's the case? Maybe we'll get a mini program between Leo and Del Sol. Maybe it's payoff at a pay-per-view. Maybe they'll find a way to, I don't know, keep him busy during Impact tapings. But for an entry-level program for Del Sol to come in and work with Leo, your eyebrows raise at that, because both those guys can go. Kalisto, aka who we now know as Samurai Del Sol, has the ability to showcase what he can do as well. But going back to what you said about Black Taurus, I want to touch on that. I think a lot of times when people think of AAA, CMLL, they think about the high-flying luchas, the Vikingos of the world, the Ray Phoenixes of the world. But really, you use the word sturdy, and that's the perfect word for Black Taurus, both in the ring and also just physically. The guy is a nice base of, he could do a lot of athletic things. He's awesome. But I think what makes lucha so good is people don't understand the diverse nature of those rosters, that there are big guys in there and able to work a different style, because it kind of rushes over you when you watch a AAA show and it's everyone flying around. A guy like Black Taurus could be an MVP of a lot of these AAA shows because of the fact he can kind of base and ground things. And that was the case here. And I love, you said it before, I just loved him going face to face with Bully Ray and being this big bad against him. So much was accomplished in that, and just having them face to face and keeping up with a guy like Bully Ray. Love the presentation. And you think back to, unique masks in wrestling. Black Taurus is one of the most unique presentations, and a legit badass, man. It's a cool presentation. The guy also has the benefit of being unassuming. Can walk through the airport, no one will know who he is, so it's some good stuff.
Yeah, this was cool. Cool to see PCO come back. Obviously, he's got his eyes set on Bully Ray. I mean, rightfully so. He did pour battery acid down his throat and light him on fire last time he saw him. But it ends up with PCO chasing Bully out of the arena. Bully ends up carjacking some poor soul in the alley behind the arena, in Chicago there, and PCO almost gets a hold of him, man. So we close the show with PCO yelling Bully into the night in the streets of Chicago. And man, I'm so excited to see where this goes.
I love PCO too, and I think he's the best mix. We talk about sturdy wrestlers, guys that
Yeah.
can kind of ground matches and keep things in perspective and work a different style, change of pace, if you will. Sometimes, bringing it back to baseball, as I always love to do, the fastball of a pitcher looks so much faster when you have a changeup that can switch speeds. A guy that can throw an 82 mile per hour changeup or a slider really makes that 96 mile per hour fastball seem that much faster because of the difference in speed. And I think a lot can be said about a guy like Black Taurus and a guy like PCO. And they'll take risks, dude. They'll go out there and they'll take risks. And we've seen PCO take some of the biggest risks we'll ever see, taking his body and do things that he should never be able to do, especially not just because of his size, because of his age. This dude's willing to sacrifice his body for the benefit of the fans and the matches. Some good stuff here. I like the advancement. And there's a lot of different stories being intertwined here. Now, PCO gets added to the mix. This heel faction, this makeshift faction that is not going to be, it's not long. Moose and Myers are going to be lasting, but this fragile relationship between Leo and Bully Ray, you could tell eventually it's going to end, and it's also going to be excited to see where that goes, because a lot of times in wrestling, a lot of people just look at heels like all heels get along, all faces get along because they have the greater good in mind. I like that there's also heels and faces that have their own issues with each other, and eventually Bully Ray's out it for himself. His kayfabe, we know that he's eventually gunning for what he's gunning for, and his interests are not going to align with Myers and Moose, and it's going to be interesting down the line.
Absolutely, man. And the cracks are already showing with PCO coming back in. Bully, like you said, is going to be the first one to fall out of this little group. I don't think Leo will be long behind him. This was a stacked show before PCO's return, man. We didn't need PCO's return here tonight, but it was just the cherry on top of the Sunday, man. This really sent this show off in a great way. I mean, the whole night had a big match feel to it, and it's a great show.
Yeah, let's get to our impactful moment, talk about our favorite match or moment from the show, and kind of wrap up things on this Impact on Access episode.
Impactful.
All right, here's our impactful moment of the week where we pick our best match or our favorite segment or whatever caught our eye of this week in television. So I'll let you start, Colton, talk about what was your favorite part that you can remember from the August 10th episode of Impact on Access.
I mean, I know we buried the lead a little bit here, man, but I think I've got to go with the Speedball Mike Bailey and Kushida match. It was the best match of wrestling across any promotion all week. Like you said, SummerSlam included. The shit was great, man. I will watch those guys go. Like I said, any night of the week, this could have been a main event, and it could have main evented a pay-per-view even. It was incredible.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I would like to just play devil's advocate and disagree with you for the sake of disagreeing, but I can't. I mean, it was the best match that I've seen, and it made sense too. It wasn't just having a match for the sake of a match. This advanced the X Division storylines. It continued to build Kushida up in the eyes of potentially, I mean, the other thing that is not included in this is he has the option right now to cash in that against Chris Sabin anywhere, anytime. It's like the Money in the Bank.
Against Leo Rush, yeah.
Leo Rush, I'm sorry. So the ability to take on Leo Rush for that championship. And going down the line, I think we're going to see this match. It's going to feel really big, and they're doing their part of pushing Kushida up the card and heating him up. This is what they do best here. It wasn't just a match for the sake of a match, putting Speedball versus Kushida because it's going to be good. We know it's going to be good, but it also advanced the storyline to get him back in the picture to at any given time. Just because he's carrying the X on his neck doesn't mean that it is obvious he's going to cash it in, but we just don't know when. It's not the same thing as the X Division Championship. I mean, the Money in the Bank, but it's close. And I think it kind of creates this intrigue about when is Kushida going to feel he's ready to take on Leo Rush for that title. But the other thing I want to reference before too is just talk about Black Taurus too. We don't see him often. He's of course been an Impact before. He makes his home mostly in AAA for the most part. I just want to shout that out, making that unique look work. And I think, we just saw the passing of Mantar or the month ago at this point. Yeah. And everyone looks at that as one of the gimmicks that did not work in wrestling. Of course, he didn't wrestle with the bull head on, the Mantar mask, if you will. But Black Taurus just makes it work in a lot of ways that if you think Mantar was not the wrestler that Black Taurus is. That's also part of it. But the presentation in 2023 where he comes in there and he's just a monster. And I don't think anyone we talk about in wrestling doing the things that he does, like presentation wise, there's not many guys that could get away with pulling off that look. And he does it so well.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody could get away with pulling it off like he does, man. He is one of a kind. He's a very, very special talent, and I hope we get to see more of him on Impact going forward. I was very excited to see him tonight. I will never forgive myself for missing the pre-order for his figure that just came, that they just announced this year. So I'm gonna have to do my best to get my hands on one because the thing looks almost as awesome as he does in person.
Little eBay action. Probably got to pay a little bit of the inflated price, but might be worth it if you want to add to your collection, because you want to talk about toyetic. A guy like him is made for wrestling figures and figure collecting altogether. Like if Black Taurus is a guy put with the right machine behind him. Again, we talk about this all the time, giving the right machine behind anybody, especially him. He could be a huge star in wrestling if people were watching. And I think the more people are checking him out, especially now that he's here in the United States working consistently with Impact and elsewhere. So I like what they did here. And Laredo Kid, we didn't talk about him a lot, but he's awesome as well. This was a cool presentation of the lucha side of wrestling that a lot of times gets understated here, but I love lucha personally. So I like when there's a mixed bag of lucha that's not just the high flyers. A guy like Black Taurus is able to go out there, as we mentioned before, grounding the match and kind of being the big man against really Bully Ray's a big dude as well. So, a nice mix of styles in this match.
Before this match started, before we saw Samurai Del Sol get taken out in the back, I was sure this was going to be match of the night for me, even after watching Speedball Mike Bailey and the Speedball Mike Bailey match. I thought this would absolutely be it just because of Laredo Kid and Black Taurus. And like I said, still a good match, but I think this had been a true 3-on-3 with no shenanigans. This would have stole the show.
This had more sports entertainment in it than a lot, because I think they're focused on the stories outside of the ring, and which is fine. I think it did its job, but if you give these guys 25 minutes on a show where it's just about the wrestling, you're right. I think they could steal any card, even including with Kushida and Speedball. But maybe we'll see them mix it up again, because we'll eventually see at least a combination similar down the line, and I'm looking forward to it.
Same here.
Let's get into Shock and Awe. Let's wrap it up for the week. Let's get prepared and talk about what's coming up tomorrow for Shot Nostalgia. Let's talk about the rest of the week in Tavern, preview the debate, all that good stuff, and some shilling, of course. Let's get to Shock and Awe.
Shock and Awe.
All right. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for hanging with us on a Thursday night talking Impact Wrestling. If you're listening to this in audio, thank you so much for doing that. Next week's show will be 8/17 for the weekly show of Impact, where we'll be talking about the latest news in Impact. The upcoming will be our go-home show for the Multiverse show in Philadelphia. Also, the upcoming show, Emergence, the pay-per-view. We're going to fill in all the gaps for you guys. Make sure you guys are up to date on all the stuff in Impact Wrestling. But before we do that, Colton, lead the way. What's going on in your neck of the woods? What's going on for the debate? Were you on this week as well?
I was not on this week, so they've got a stacked list of new guests coming up on the debate. So that show's always a great time. Dropping on YouTube on Sundays and audio on Mondays. We're getting some new faces and some big ones coming through. So make sure you're checking that out there. Mullet.mania on Instagram. Give me a follow. I did enter the Mullet Champ USA competition earlier this would have been I entered on August 2nd, so just over a week ago. Registration's still open through the end of August, so come September I'll have voting information for everybody. But yeah, just want to echo what Ace said. Thank you guys so much. If you're listening to this, if you watching along with us on YouTube or listening to us on Apple and Spotify, we love doing this show. Thank you guys for hanging with us. We really appreciate the support. As always, theturnbuckletavern.com. You can please, like, subscribe, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. We're on TikTok. We're on Twitch. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram, Facebook. Or I guess Twitter's called X now. I'm not really sure. I'm not on there. Whatever the fuck Elon Musk wants to do over there. We're on it either way. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees or Teespring, get yourself a t-shirt. If you do listen to the shows on Apple and Spotify, if you haven't left a 5-star review, please do go. It goes a long way. Every single one counts. And if you do, take a screenshot of it, send it to the Tavern's Instagram page. Ace will send you some stickers, man.
Absolutely. I got a lot of stickers, some new ones for Shot Nostalgia Saturday Night's Main Event. I got the Smoky Mountain Wrestling ones. I got the added the WWF 1998 ones as well. So I got a lot of stockpiles. And speaking of that, if you guys are in the Amesbury, Massachusetts area, New Hampshire border, come out to Rad Pro Wrestling on Saturday. It's an early show. It's kind of the precursor to American Rana that I was referencing before on August 13th for Beyond. In the same area, Rad Pro Wrestling is going to be having Birds of a Feather. Going to be an awesome night of wrestling, or day, I should say, at the Lafayette Club in Amesbury, Massachusetts. It's a day show. It's the 1994 inspired promotion that takes wrestling back into time where they have, well-known wrestlers, great wrestlers from the independent scene, have a new twist on their characters. So some familiar faces with some new names and presentations. And myself, I won't be known as Aceville Retro. I will be known as Fred Vernon, the ring announcer. So different presentation going back to 1994, nostalgia base. I love it. Rad Pro Wrestling. Can't wait to be working with that promotion, working with some of the talent there. I love the first 2 shows they did. So Birds of a Feather, if you're in the area. If not, check it out on IWTV. I believe it will be available streaming probably a week later or so. And go to IWTV and support, thousands of hours of independent wrestling being given there. So regardless, check that out and support independent wrestling. But that's all we got for you guys. Again, make sure you guys check out Shot Nostalgia tomorrow. It's episode 6 of 7, our season finale before the season finale, where we're talking about November of 1994 in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It's a bit of an abbreviated episode. Our last 2 episodes are about an hour and change. We filmed them in advance, but it's because we're only covering 1 month. So as we do the lead, we have 2 more weeks of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Then we're getting into what's going to be a really fun season. I got the physical copies of the Wrestling Observer newsletters for Saturday night's main event. We're going to be covering the first 2 episodes starting on August 25th. So it's going to be a lot of good stuff there. It's going to be an interesting season. Colton will be on for some of them. Of course, Spellcaster and I will be on for most of them, talking about all things Saturday night's main event. Maybe we'll have some guests. I put out a list to the tavern, see if some guests want to pop on and talk about it. It's a different flair because it's not just one time period. It's from 85 to 92. And then we're also going to talk about the ones from 06 and 08 that popped in there as they brought them back. So it's going to be cool to talk about the franchise that was, what started it, NBC and all that stuff with Dick Ebersol and everything that went on with Vince McMahon and NBC and the main event going on first. It's going to be really cool because Saturday night's main event has a certain special place in everybody's heart growing up. So some big moments we're going to be covering. That being said, we appreciate the support as always. We'll catch you guys next week after a while.